Great, nice job, everybody. Starts. With that. So this is the third part of the evening, I guess. Community share. Anyone has any questions about the talk or practice or life or anything? Or reports about the practice or quotes or songs or poems? Whatever. So you can share.
Thank you. You're really good at you're good at guiding meditation.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Do you have a particular experience?
Geez. I think I really liked how you were specific about how our experiences are to welcome them and that they're acceptable and different ways to approach what we're feeling and to guide our own meditation in a way that feels comfortable.
Great. So it sounds like something you could do, follow along, notice different things happening. Great. Well, enjoy it.
I did.
Go ahead, Jess.
I've been contemplating a lot the power of meditation for the world situation. My son has been giving me more of the news, which I avoid. And part of it is how people are gearing for violence and bearing arms. And so the alternative could be to bear meditation. You know, to trust that it's valuable. If you can imagine, you know, being amidst all of the for lack of a better word, chaos and fearful thoughts or experiences, to sit amidst that. And right now I have a challenge in my own life. Perhaps that is reflecting the larger chaos. And my question comes up, well, if I'm so smart, how come I can't figure out what to do? You know, and all I come up with was, you know, sit with it. And I think that there's more, but maybe it requires that sitting with it to allow it. And the only other thing to share is that I'm now moving towards establishing a household for the purpose of meditation. And with that idea that maybe that's the best thing we could do, or all that we could do. I mean, you could stand up and say, well, this is what the community is offering for something to help the world, or that, or that. But maybe if we're sitting and it's scientifically proven that that makes a difference, maybe there's no better use of time.
Mm.
You can't, I think that it goes hand in hand with everything, but I don't know.
I think I've been using meditation to deal with a lot of trauma. Like I've just started all this work recently, and I noticed like getting quiet, just the levels of like resistance and critique in me. And I think that also applies to anything, any pain, suffering. The resistance is what like causes all the problems and pain and anxiety and fear. And it's just been really, really helpful.
Mm.
It's
Yeah.
interesting to me. It was my experience before coming to this academy place, and when I talked to some other people. So it's been my experience before I came and joined this place, and talking to other people. A lot of times when things are going well, less of a desire to practice, and yet when everything's going terribly, suddenly practice seems really important to them. Kind of a mystery, but kind of makes sense too. And I think in the time of a crisis, I don't know, what comes to mind is I think about how if I'm trying to train a dog, or I'm trying to raise a kid, a small kid, and if the kid gets a boo-boo or gets hurt, they look to the parent to see, is that okay? Should I be freaking out right now? Is this fun? Is this bad? What should I do right now? And if the parent is, happy and is easeful, it's not a problem, then the kid learns out. It's okay, not a big deal. It hurts a little bit, but fun. You can continue playing. Or I remember when I was trying to train my dog, and dogs can, and kids, and a lot of people can tell subtly the energy body of if I'm scared or resisting, think something's bad, worried. And so say I'm walking the dog and another dog is ahead, and internally I get scared and I'm worried, oh no, maybe my dog's gonna bite this dog. I get tense and worried. And somehow my dog picks up on my fear and worry, and now thinks, oh no, there's a problem. Maybe I'm supposed to attack this dog. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy of in a time of crisis, we revert back to like our youngest selves, and we look around and we think, oh, what am I supposed to do right now? Looks like everyone else is freaking out, maybe I should be freaking out too. So in a way, it's very revolutionary and necessary, like you said, maybe not the only thing, but at least the necessary thing, that there's at least one person in the room in a crisis moment that isn't freaking out and going, oh no, I could say everything's going to be fine. This is bad, it's hurtful, damaging, but we don't need to lose our mind and go crazy and start attacking each other. Go insane. But rather than do that, most of us, including me, usually feel tight and tense and feel the trauma or pains and wounds, and instead go to our head and try to think of a solution because we don't want to feel scared, which creates more tension, which makes us think even more. And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy about something feels bad, I need to solve it, oh no, it's getting worse, I need to solve it more. And so in meditation, kind of like you shared, all these subtle things can start coming up, and we're learning how to have a full, complete experience of living through the whole cycle. And that can be a great gift to other people in the room, in the world, that before we lose our minds, we can actually digest and eat, metabolize the experience we're getting, and not need to rush somewhere else. And so, really applaud you for doing that, because at least in my experience in those times, most of my body is saying, don't do that. Go do something else, anything else.
Yeah.
Which is why I think, if you look at most of the enlightened people, a lot of the enlightened people, it goes back to this thing about we really practice when things are going poorly, and we don't have any other options, or we go, oh, I can't do anything, which is why I said there are some benefits to being a homeless ascetic where you just don't have any other options. The only option is to practice. I don't have any other outs. So it's not necessary per se, but it's simpler in certain respects. And so there's a great benefit to, I look at a lot of enlightened masters and talk to some people and they said, yeah, a lot of them had to face death or great grief and suffering, or got really sick themselves, or people they loved got really sick. And they didn't have any other outs. They couldn't come up with some ideology or technology or philosophy or system to indoctrinate everyone else to follow. They just had to eat that suffering themselves and learn how to resolve it. And then could give such great gifts and miracles from having done that. And so it's a great gift in some ways to suffer greatly, because then Kima Chodron is this Tibetan nun. She's a Westerner, she practiced Tibetan Buddhism. And she has books like Wisdom of No Escape, or something. No,
Who is that?
Kima Chodron,
Oh, yes.
Wisdom of No Escape.
I just didn't hear the name.
Yeah. I can't remember the titles now, but Everything Falls Apart or something.
Yeah.
Great book titles.
I'll just check that out.
Yeah. And she just keeps talking about this great wisdom. Great suffering can become a great opportunity. And so, in this time of crisis, the one thing is it could be a great opportunity, as well as all the great suffering and problems and turmoil and destruction that's happening. It can be a great opportunity. And I was talking to one of my friends who's committed his life to fighting global warming, and that's his day in, day out, what he does all hours of his day besides raising his family. And he said, as an activist, you don't want to let any crisis go to waste, and you want to intentionally create crisis when there isn't one, so that people have to change. Corporations have to change, that governments have to change. And in a way, no one wants to face a crisis, and it was up to us, we would definitely not face a crisis. But if we have good friends, or good teachers, or good community, they might either help us face the crisis that's already there, or find skillful ways to create crisis for us so that we can grow and learn, develop, not because we want to suffer or create harm, but just because crisis can be really useful sometimes. Sounds like you've settled into the same, seems like you found the same wisdom that there's a crisis, there's a lot of problems, and step one is put the safety mask over ourselves first before we can help anyone else, and learn how to stay sane and clear. And then everyone else can see, oh, maybe we can also stay sane and clear, and it's okay not to freak out right now. Maybe there's a skillful way of navigating this crisis rather than...
I think the analogy you made with the dog is interesting, because when you were talking about like people's energy and like guiding other people or like influencing them, I was thinking of like being like our own guide and like parenting our own inner child and thoughts and guidance. Just thinking that in a crisis, that seems like, I don't know, just something I've been thinking about a lot lately.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. So part of meditation can be learning how to retrain our own self-parenting,
Mm-hmm.
so that we learn how to navigate as a skill, a practice, our own mini crisis. Of course, I'm saying crisis, but it can also be, how do I fully experience this great joy, this great bliss, this great love? Noticing the ways that the Academy, we do the circling practice, of how do we hold back in connection, hold back from great compassion, hold back from even pleasant things, even good things can be terrifying if we're not used to them. So,
I was thinking when you're saying like create crisis, I was thinking, oh, like how do we do that? It's like by taking risks, right? It's like by opening ourselves up, like personal crises, not global crises, but that's really can be scary.
and to some extent, I think people, you don't necessarily need to create, there probably are ones coming or already ones present,
Mm-hmm.
so no need to add on extra things if we already got plenty on our plate. I was thinking more in a training scenario, if you're playing baseball or something, and your coach might, tell you to try swinging with your other dominant, with your non-dominant hand. Learn how to practice on a weakness. Or at the Academy, we might practice in a cold, or with less sleep. So we would sometimes tell you you're doing something wrong, even though he doesn't tell you what it is, and it's not, we've been doing this the same way the last 20 days, so what's wrong now? And so, in Zen, for example, they say the teacher of the job is to knock you off your pedestal. You go into the interview room, and the Zen master's job is to shove you off to see how stable are you. Can you withstand this? And if not, then that's okay. Get stronger. Get more established in your practice so that nothing can move us. So yeah, it's very rich territory. I think a lot of issues of parenting these days is not, and really education and pretty much everything is not wanting to put other people, not wanting other people to face a crisis, even a mini crisis.
Not wanting other people to face a crisis?
Yeah.
You mean like trying to avoid, like make sure your child doesn't feel like too much pain, or like,
Yeah, that'd be a version of it. I'm thinking, when I was younger, there's two examples. I remember one of my friends in college, way back when, was becoming an alcoholic. All of us were talking about it and saying, "Wow, he's really drinking a lot. He's like blacking out, and like he like fell out of a window once, fell outside the building through a window." And we were like, maybe we should do something about this. And everyone was like, well, you know, he likes what he likes. You know, what's it? You know, what's it? What are we to say something to him? You know, it's his freedom or whatever. And I was like, what? This doesn't make sense. He's our friend. He's hurting himself. We all agree this is bad, and we're increasingly not wanting to spend time with him, so shouldn't we do something about this? Right, another friend was getting married to someone who a lot of the old friends thought, this doesn't make sense, this doesn't seem like a compatible match. Shouldn't we say something about this? And there's this thing about not wanting to face conflict, or not wanting to ruffle feathers, or not wanting them to feel really confused or bad or something. When I was in grad school and I was a TA, a teaching assistant, helped grade papers and stuff. And you don't want to give someone like a D or a C or even a B, even A minus these days. You don't want someone to feel bad and be like, oh, I did a bad job. But then we become really fragile, and any small problem now becomes a huge problem. And people don't have the practice or the skill of receiving that kind of feedback from the world, and also learning. We don't have as much of a cultural shared practice of sharing that kind of feedback with other people.
Right.
And so everyone's kind of walking on eggshells with each other, while the entire planet's melting and getting destroyed. So one of the things we do at the Academy a lot is learning how to give each other feedback. Doing it very poorly a lot of times, but we're not doing it enough. We're doing it too often. Because this, it can put people into this state of mind that feels like a crisis. Oh my God, I'm so terrible. Oh my God, whatever. This place is terrible. I'm terrible. Life is terrible. Everything's terrible. But for those of us, as just to say, who've actually gone through this, who have had to go through this in our own lives, or intentionally put ourselves in a situation where we have to go through it, like fasting or meditation retreat or something, we learn, oh, there is something on the other side. This actually can be practiced and learned and developed. Or another way we say unlearned and surrendered. And then we're more and more willing to do it with people because we have faith and trust in their ability to handle it. So it's a great gift, as you're saying, to face it for ourselves. And then having faced it in ourselves, we don't have to worry, oh, I'm going to give this person feedback and they're just going to be destroyed or something.
Yeah, you're really bringing things to specifically what I'm dealing with. And so I wanted to address it if I could. That I am now in the process of giving very specific feedback to the behavior of one of the people in the household. And it comes amidst a lot of feedback to everyone. In other words, there's a lot of difficulty communicating, people wanting a lot of freedom, and if you ask for change, it feels like control. If you give feedback, it feels like parenting that was not well received. So if somebody is exhibiting like not just once but several times behavior that feels out of control, escalating to being more out of control, and then I put it on the table and say, what are we gonna do about this as a household? And at first I think, well, it needs to go to the authority of the land person, or it needs to go directly to that individual. But by mistake, it went to everyone. And now it's like, I'm like really attacked, you know? I'm attacked as somebody who's controlling, giving feedback in a way that is too selfish or whatever, you know, and I don't know. I try to ignore things to the best that I can, and then I can't. So I guess the question is, it came up, how do I make peace with this situation now that I have poorly given feedback or somehow communicated in a way that doesn't work because I didn't want to just, as you said, just brush it under the rug. You know, just ignore, saying, okay, we're not going to do this because in this culture it's too uncomfortable to give feedback. It's too uncomfortable to talk to the person who's getting married or the person who's whatever, and I say, but actually it's affecting me. You know, and right now I have not slept at all. Before I was just kind of not sleeping, but now I'm not at all, because now they're all like on the case. It's like, okay, who's gonna keep her up tonight? Let's do it. You know, yeah. Get this bitch out of here, you know. And I'm like, okay. And the irony is that I found myself really caring about this person who I was giving feedback to. And so I cared about myself. And I cared about the truth. And I cared about whatever comes next, you know, that whatever that means, the truth coming out, or the, you know, somebody stumbling into saying something to the drunk person or the person getting married or whatever, you know, just like stumbled into it and say, okay, so now it's on the table, you know, and then all I can do is sit with it.
Well, I'm not an expert at intentional households. I tried to live in one and start one many years ago, and it also failed very miserably, similarly. I'll just say two things come to mind. One would be, Zori has said something like, a friend is someone that gives you advice, and a teacher is someone that gives you advice and is not a hypocrite. And when I look at monasteries around the world that have they've existed for centuries or even thousands of years, my conjecture, my hypothesis of one reason why those communities persist is because there's at least one real master in that community that cannot be a hypocrite, And so when other people are getting really harsh feedback, they have the trust and the faith that this person actually does have my best interest at heart, and I've been in a relationship with them long enough to trust that they aren't attacking them. Which is really hard to do in an urban communal living situation. You don't have as much of this thing. And the other thing that comes to mind is, in the military they say that, you look at these high pressure teams and groups, military, athletic teams, certain businesses, or activists, or monastics. There's a lot of intensity, there can be a lot of conflict, there can be a lot of disagreement, there can be a lot of bruised egos, emotions that run high. And why do those groups still persist in a way that, say, a family or a group of friends or a bunch of people that come together to start an intentional community don't? And I think it's because in all of those settings, there is a common shared mission or vision that everyone agrees is more important than anything else.
Yeah.
And an athletic team is about winning. In a military, it's about getting the mission done. In each setting, there's a certain agreed thing that's more important than any single person, and it's agreed upon that no single person is greater than the mission, if the vision. If the vision is being threatened, we're not going to change the vision to meet one person. And this is really hard to say to people. Again, we don't want to create crisis in anyone or make people feel bad. But we're not going to diminish what we're doing as a group to accommodate one person. And in my experience, my limited experience and observation, most of these intentional communities that get formed, there isn't a very strong shared vision. There is more of this, I want to live with people and feel good. It's really the extent of it usually. I don't like living with strangers, like Craigslist, just random people. I want to live with people that I like and enjoy being around. But that alone, I don't know, is enough to navigate all the issues that come up. This can happen in relationships, this can happen in friendships, this can happen in business. Is there something larger, more important than my ego, than my emotions?
Like at the monastery.
There's at the monastery too, where, I feel really terrible, but we're all here really to develop and become these awakened leaders. And we all agree and understand. Now, sometimes people lose sight of that or don't believe that or something, and then things don't go very well. But generally, people get angry at the monastery, not getting feedback, going, you're not giving me feedback is not helping me develop, and I thought we're here to make awakened leaders. So why aren't you giving me feedback? So there's a shared goal that it's not about making each other feel good. Although that's valuable too, don't get me wrong with wanting to make each other feel good, that's great. But it's not greater than the mission or the vision of the group. And at least in my community, we had an aspiration, this household that I started, but at the end of the day, for most of us, feeling not attacked and feeling safe and feeling good trumped whatever. Maybe we lack the skill or we lack the commitment or the dedication or whatever, but at the end of the day, that won out. So I'm not a very good expert at, I'm lucky, I'm at the academy where we have this shared vision. You have to sign a piece of paper saying this is your vision.
What's that? What's that?
You have to sign a piece of paper when you become a resident saying, yeah, this is what I'm committing to.
Right.
So it's understood. I don't know if people have that clear-cut thing when they make a household. So I don't have good advice besides maybe.
Well, what I'm experiencing is that something greater is emerging. And and so doing the meditation accesses that greater energy
Right.
that can help
Right.
I don't know whether it eliminates or solves, but it helps. And yeah, the amazing. So I guess what I'm going into now another night where I'm thinking, well, maybe it's going to be another sleepless night, and then maybe I just sit.
Or is it you, are they keeping you awake, or is it just your mind
Yes.
that's keeping you awake? Your mind?
Uh,
Oh,
Both?
Probably both. Yeah.
Oh, I see.
But my point being that if that is the result, then what is the appropriate thing that you could be just sitting in? And I heard and somebody was talking about reading about the autobiography of the yogi, and that he often would sit during a sleepless experience. So I thought, well, okay, maybe that's the best of it. What I experienced this morning, that's all I'm trying to say, is that I experienced tremendous love for the main person, and I couldn't figure out where that was coming from. And I said, okay, I'll take it. This is good. I'd rather experience that than, a reaction and feeling like there's no out. There's no way out.
yeah, so in a sitting group like this, sitting is always good. So I would encourage finding a way to settle and come back to stillness. And thanks for sharing. I think,
Oh yeah.
we're at time, so we have to wrap up. Thanks to all for coming out. And I don't know who will be here next week, but someone will be here next week. So look forward to continuing this group and keep practicing.